Welcome, this is Charlie from CIC News for You with a new video on the corruption of the Biden family. I think you will find this video quite interesting, and after evaluating the information, you will undoubtedly be able to conclude corruption of a criminal nature by this family, or at least, the very least, the use of the vice presidency to enrich many family members. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe there are crimes here as well as items that need further investigation. What we don't need is a major cover up by the mainstream media or social media by censorship, which is a common method to protect Joe Biden, their new puppet. The credit for the majority of this research is Peter Schweizer, the president of the Government Accountability Institute and a contributor of Breitbart News. So, let's get started. And there's no one better to cover first than Hunter Biden, Joe's son, that he describes as the most intelligent person he knows. That's kind of funny, though. Joe must have some really low standards, in my opinion, given the videos and escapades of this very smart person. So, Hunter has been a very busy person during his father's political career, including working as a lobbyist for gambling companies in Europe. So, what does a lobbyist do? They pander to politicians to get bills passed in their favor. It is a lucrative job and takes connections to be successful. So, where did Biden get his connections from? Of course, good old Joe. I just wonder what Hunter actually did as a lobbyist, and we'll have to research more. But let's move on. It seems Hunter in 2013 joins his father on Air Force Two on a trip to China. What a benefit to be able to travel with your dad on a taxpayer funded plane. But that's not really a problem. But here's the issue. 10 days after this trip, Hunter locks up a deal for $1 billion. Get that? $1 billion in financing from the state run Bank of China. Now think about this. Would China or the Chinese Communist Party provide this money without the intention of payback of some sort? That is a pretty easy connection to make. The kicker is that Hunter has no experience in finance, at least not at these levels, and he actually stated in an interview that he thinks his name had something to do with everything in his life. You see any dots here? Well, let's continue. Sometime later in Hunter's career, he joins the board of directors in a Chinese firm called BHR Partners and receives an equity stake. Is this based on the Biden name or experience? It is all about good old Joe, his father. To confirm this, all you have to do is review what Hunter's business partners stated, which is he doesn't bring anything to the table. Not money, not expertise. So what does he bring? The Biden name. Now, get this. To this day, good old Joe says he knows nothing, absolutely nothing, and has never discussed any business with his son. Sure, I have a bridge to sell you if you believe this, but our good old mainstream media and social media accept this and are protecting Joe. You decide if this is true or not. Okay, a couple of more items just to seal the mark of corruption or political influence by good old Joe for his son Hunter. Hunter's paid $3.5 million by a Russia oligarch, and the media doesn't research this and ignores the story. How would the media deal with this if it was one of Trump's sons? Not much more to say about this. But of course, there's more. How about the money coming into Hunter from a corrupt Burisma company where Joe publicly stated he had the Ukrainian prosecutor on the investigation trail that could implicate Hunter fired with the threat of removal of foreign aid, a substantial amount of foreign aid. You can't make this crap up, and at times I think I am reading a novel on our government's internal corruption. Where's the media? Corrupt and hiding the news from the public. I could go on and on, there's so much, but you get the point, and you make your own conclusion. But there is more. How about Joe Biden's older brother, Frank? It seems Frank was just a so and so real estate agent in Florida, which is not really an issue. But what is concerning is the millions Frank received in taxpayer loans for real estate in the Caribbean. Again, not a significant issue. But here's the dot. This was when Joe was vice president. Didn't Joe just recently state publicly on TV that no one in his family will be involved in taking advantage of the government in Joe's name? Sorry, Joe, it is too late. This is outrageous. But that is not the end of it. It seems Frank goes into the renewable energy business with no background in that industry. Sounds just like Hunter and his experiences. Frank goes on and sets up companies in Costa Rica and Jamaica, once again at taxpayers' expense. He gets taxpayer backed loans from who else? The Obama Biden administration. See any dots here? Let's continue. Frank's business interests expand, and he receives millions in grants from none other than the Department of Education. This money is for construction of charter schools, which is discretionary, meaning the Department of Education can decide who to give the money to. And of course, this happens while Joe is vice president. See any dots? Oh, and Frank gets a privileged meeting with Barack Obama, attended by a few others concerning his business. Additional dots? I think so, but just in case you are in doubt, know that Joe's younger brother stated that the Biden name is a tremendous asset that receives automatic acceptance for school projects and public funding. Seems to me this is an illegal use of influence. You decide. I know. Speaking of Joe's younger brother James, let's cover his benefits from good old Joe. For starters, James was an executive vice president of Hillstone International, a firm that received $1.5 billion in contracts during the Obama administration, including a contract to build 100,000 homes in Iraq as a project to assist Iraqis. Funny thing though, at this time, good old Joe had oversight of humanitarian government funded projects in Iraq while he was vice president. See any dots? Looks obvious to me. The founder of this company visited the White House and met with a top aide to Vice President Biden. A dot. By meeting an aide, Joe can deny involvement. But can he really? This is his aide, and they don't do things without their superior's knowledge. Also, it seems strange to me that James has no background in construction or international development. So here we go again. Hire a Biden and you have full access to the top. To top it off, if you look at Hillstone International's profile, it boasts of James Biden and his connection to Joe. A blatant dot publicly stating good old Joe was accessible through James. Now, to make sure we have a bit of diversity, we need to discuss Joe's sister, Valerie, who Joe put in to run his senatorial campaign in Delaware. And of course, she benefits from her brother's later presidential campaigns. In 2008, she sends $2.5 million to her political communications firm. I'd like to know how much she got of this. Now, realize back when Joe was running for the Senate, it was a no-lose situation. I am from Delaware. It's a strong sheep state and very democratic. I can tell you this was a shoe-in campaign that just filtered money to Valerie. Joe doesn't want to leave any members of the family out of the pot of political gold. Remember, Joe's a career politician. Another dot? Seems to me. Okay, we've covered a son, two brothers, and a sister. So we can't leave out Joe's daughter, Ashley, who is married to Howard Krein, who created a healthcare company called Startup Health back in 2011. In addition, it seems good old Joe assisted his daughter's husband in getting a meeting with Barack Obama in the Oval Office weeks after the company's founding. And the cherry on top is getting Barack Obama to get the company an invitation to Health Data Palooza, a joint conference of the federal government and health industry. Wow, this event is tough to get into, but not with a presidential recommendation. How many in the health industry didn't have the opportunity of a presidential recommendation to get a seat at this conference? I assume there was a waiting list of companies that wished to have this opportunity. So maybe we could let this discretion slide a bit. But to add to Barack's recommendation, good old Joe gives private speeches to the partners and investors of Ashley Biden's husband. Something seems illegal in this scenario, but I'm not a lawyer. At a minimum, it looks like a conflict of interests, in my opinion, and another dot. The kicker is now, right now, Krein is advising Joe Biden's campaign on coronavirus matters, while the company is investing $1 million in goods and services for virus-related businesses, with assurances they're going to get a good payback. What an opportunity to enrich his family and open the door to potential millions based on political favoritism for family members. I really don't care what the media says. This is a conflict of interest, and Joe Biden needs to remove this company from profiting off of good old Joe. A grand dot that we most likely will watch develop over time. So, one more family member to discuss that didn't seem to hit the news until after the election was over, of course. This shows the corruption of our legal system as well as mainstream media. It is so frustrating being a conservative when these situations happen. But you know what makes this situation outrageous? I don't think there is a black person out there that would get this type of treatment. In fact, Joe Biden jailed thousands upon thousands of blacks for drug possession, including simple pot possession, and many spent numerous years in prison. But here you have a connected white girl and the niece of Joe Biden, and she basically walks free. And the media hid this until post-election, along with the judges. So sad. Finally, I want to cover some items I discovered during my research from a Politico article called Biden Inc. by Ben Schreckinger, and it was published in August 2019. This is a great article, except that the author goes out of his way over and over again to say that Joe wasn't involved, or other statements that protect Biden's family. I can only guess this is the only way he could get this to go to print, because the evidence he presents is overwhelming. It just seems strange that Schreckinger would publish a piece and lay out the corruption, but always counter his findings. Something seems out of sorts. The bottom line of the Biden's corruption is a statement already pointed out by one of Hunter's business associates that asked one of the Bidens how they could get away with this kind of stuff. The answer was plausible deniability, which means to deny knowledge of or responsibility for any damnable actions committed by others because of a lack of absence of evidence that can confirm their participation, even if they were personally involved in or at least willfully ignorant of the actions. This seems to me to be the crux of what Joe Biden is hiding under. Plausible deniability of his family members. What a scam. You can read the details in this article, which is long, but I have provided a link at the end of the video for you. However, let me cover a few items, all which are dots to corruption and point to Joe Biden having knowledge as well as being involved along the way, many times. So late in 2006, Joe Biden's son Hunter and Joe's younger brother James purchased Paradigm Global Advisors. Not a problem on the surface, but here are some concerning points. According to executives of Paradigm, James Biden stated, "Don't worry about investors. We've got people all around the world who want to invest in Joe Biden." And in fact, James said, "We've got investors in a line of 747s filled with cash ready to invest in this company." So it seems this is an investment in Joe Biden right from the start. To prove this is an issue, let's see what Beau Biden stated. Rest his soul. He says, "This can never leave this room, and if you ever say it again, I will have nothing to do with this." Seems like he knew this was wrong, but yet the family continues along this path. To continue, the author of the article states that interviews, court records, government filings, and news reports show that members of the Biden family have mixed business and politics over 50 years, moving from one business to the next. Further research showed that over 5 years, James and Hunter became associated with a number of alleged and confirmed frauds, including a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme, and in addition continued to seek to draw on their powerful relatives' political allies for financing. So wrong. Where's our media? In the 1990s, a group of Mississippi trial lawyers brought in James Biden to gain advantages in Washington as it sought congressional support for a tobacco mega settlement. 10 years later, those Mississippi contacts supported Joe Biden's presidential bid, hosting a fundraiser for him and accepting an invitation to accompany Joe to a high-profile Washington dinner, while they are working on preparing to launch a lobbying firm with James and his wife, Sarah. How much more corruption do you need to see? Eventually, the Mississippians were arrested and then jailed for unrelated bribery schemes. The point is, this is the type crowd the Bidens ran with. Are you getting the picture? As soon as freshman lawmaker Joe Biden was seated on the Senate Banking Committee, James became the beneficiary of business loans that were described in news accounts as unusually generous because of the large amount of money he was able to borrow with little or no collateral and a lack of prior experience. How many Americans have these types of opportunities in life? Only the rich and the famous and the Bidens. In early 1977, James Biden could not make payments on his loans and had to give up his struggling nightclub. A year later, the man who took it over for him was fighting First Pennsylvania in court, claiming the bank had set him up to take the failing club off of James Biden's hands. Quote, "The bank didn't want the senator's brother to be on the paper when the disco folded. They needed a patsy, me." Look, how many more dots do you need to see or understand the corruption in this family? A family of thieves supporting each other, and truthfully, how can Joe Biden continue to say he knows nothing? Personally, I don't believe him. I suggest you read this article in its entirety because I am only hitting the surface. You will see the truth even though the author tries to deny many misdeeds. But as I said, it was probably the only way to get this published. All of these dots together tell the corruption of the swamp that feeds its own while leaving the rest of us out of the picture. Pretty obvious to me. But I think that Schweitzer has it pretty well summed up. And here we go. Here's what he said. "The Bidens are unprecedented in the extent and scope of the corruption because I've been doing this for a long time," he said. "I've exposed Republicans and Democrats. The most that I've ever seen up to this point was a Republican senator from Missouri that had 3 family members engaged in this kind of behavior. The Bidens now have 5, making the Biden 5, in my mind, the reigning champs when it comes to corrupt behavior in Washington, D.C. That says it all. Well, to sum this up, I have no doubt of the corruption of the Biden family, particularly Joe, who has done absolutely nothing except politics for his whole life. It is sad that Joe keeps reminding people he is from Scranton, as if he is of the people. That is a stretch or basic lie, and was so long ago it doesn't apply. Joe has no experience except politics, and he doesn't have a clue about working people. Or if he does, he's basing it on 65 plus years ago. I'd say a lot has changed since then. I hope you enjoyed this video and watch others that I plan to create to keep you informed. I wish all of you the best, and please stay safe. Be informed and stay informed with CIC News for You. This is Charlie, signing off.